So this is the second presentation for topic 6, globalisation. We know that there are two important aspects of globalisation, as we said in the last presentation, that globalisation involves a growth in multinational corporations and a growth in international trade. What I want to focus on in this presentation is trade. So the economic justification for trade. So why do we do it? I want to bring in first of all the theory of absolute advantage. Now for this, what we have to assume is that we have two different countries. And these are simplistic diagrams, assuming that the countries can make either product A or product B. And I don't know, let's call this country the UK, and we'll call this one France. So I'm drawing a production possibility boundary for these countries, and what I'm assuming is that if the UK used all of its resources to produce product A, it could produce 10. If it used all of them to produce product B, it could produce 20. So I'm assuming that France has got the equal number of resources to the UK, so the factors of production are more or less identical. In France, they can make 20 of A, 10 of B. Now what we can see here is the theory of absolute advantage. Here we've got a clear benefit to international trade between these two countries. What we have to establish is the terms of trade. So a trade where both countries are happy to exchange one good for another good. So let's imagine that we look at the UK. They know the opportunity cost of making 1A is that they will lose 2B. In France, they know for every B they make, they lose 2A. So you can see from the diagrams that the UK has got an absolute advantage at making product B. France, absolute advantage at making product A. Let's imagine we establish trade where 1A is equal to 1B. So the UK will specialise in making 20 products B. If they wanted to, well, let's look at France first of all. France should specialise in making 20A. So UK make 20B, France makes 20A. If the UK wanted to, they could exchange their 20B for 20A from France. So what we see here is that the production possibility boundary of the UK is increased. We call this the trading possibility curve. So with international trade, we can see that the UK can benefit then. In France, if they made 20A, in theory they could exchange it for 20B from the UK economy. So they have a trading possibility curve. Now what we can see here then is a further benefit of international trade. Countries can actually have more. So rather than putting their resources in something that they're inefficient at doing, put your resources where you're good and exchange your goods for another country who's better at making a different product to you. For this case, Britain is better at making B, France is better at making A. Well, rather than chucking your resources to making the other product which you're not very good at making, make what you're best at and exchange it. So that should mean solving our economic problem becomes easier. We can do more now. We've got more goods and services, so more of A and B, which means we can satisfy more wants and needs. I want to consider now a slightly more complicated reason for international trade. And what we're going to focus on this time is a comparative advantage diagram. So we're now looking at comparative advantage. Again, what I'm going to assume this time is two different countries. We've got the UK and we've got Kenya. Again, what I'll do, I'll draw two production possibility boundaries for these countries. This time, I'm assuming that we can either have financial services, or we can have flowers. And what I'm going to assume is that in Britain, in the UK, if we used all our resources to make financial services, we could make 10. If we used all of our resources to make flowers, we could have 10. In Kenya, they could make a maximum of 4 financial services or 8 flowers. Now this is different to absolute advantage. What you can see this time is that the UK has got an absolute advantage at making both products. So you're thinking now, well, what can the UK gain from trading with Kenya? Now the theory of comparative advantage is based on the theory of opportunity cost. So if we look at the UK, for example, every financial service they make, they lose 1 flower. So their opportunity cost is 1 for 1. So that is the UK's opportunity cost. If we look at Kenya, for every financial service they make, they lose 2 flowers. So what we can see is that the UK can produce, I'd say, a lower opportunity cost than Kenya can. And now we've got that, we can actually look at creating international trade between these two countries. So again, we have to establish a terms of trade. So we're looking at this. Now I want to set one financial service, I beg your pardon, to be equal to 1.5 flowers. If we look towards the UK economy now, if the UK was to put most of its resources into making financial services, then what it can do is exchange its financial services for flowers with Kenya. Financial services, we can make a maximum of 10. That will mean we can actually bring in flowers from Kenya. So at current rate, we can see that 10 financial services will buy us 15 flowers. So we can see that the UK gained from this international trade. If Kenya solely focuses on making flowers, then it can exchange its 8 flowers for approximately 5.3 financial services. So we can establish terms of trade where both countries are happy to trade. Clearly, if the terms of trade fell in the UK's favour, so maybe one financial service would be equal to 2 flowers, our TPC would move further to the right. Kenya, it would make it move more to the left, to the original line. The UK will be gaining more from that international trade. If terms of trade were to go the other way, so more flowers, so one finance might be worth only half a flower, for example, the TPC for Kenya would move to the right, so they gain more financial services for their flowers, whereas in the UK it would move to the left. Now what we're finding over time is that comparative advantages are shifting in the favour of the big developed economies such as the UK, France, Germany, Spain, America, for example. So that means that we're actually having to give less of our products in exchange for goods from Africa, shall we say. So it's working in our favour and against economies in Africa and other developing parts of the world.